Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Making Contact from 1985. So this movie has, like, E.T. Poltergeist-like vibes, and I would probably also compare it to probably, like, the John Travolta movie Phenomenon, where he goes on and, like, is kind of moving, like, sunglasses, and it seems like he asks it to move, and it does so. Like, it's kind of like that. Because we have this Joey character that goes on to obtain superpowers, but we have Joey that's kind of assuming that it's probably coming from another source instead of just him. And so we have this story kind of being a ghost tale. So what happens here is we have Joey who is to lose his father, Peter, for reasons that aren't explained in this film. And we have Joey who is to try to go on and seek comfort via a toy phone that bizarrely rings. Joey answers this phone to find out that there is a male voice on the other end of the phone, so Joey just continues to talk to this phone. One thing leads to another, or whatever transitional word I can state here. Joey finds this abandoned Fletcher's house and has forcibly needing to go inside of it to then find this old-fashioned puppet. And we have Joey that obtains this puppet and then goes on to regret it, as we find that the puppet is to go on and tell Joey who he is really talking to, and this is to go on and have a tie to this puppet who is named Fletcher's past. So we seem to have the puppet, or Fletcher, go on and tell Joey what to do, and or else he'll go on and hurt other people. So Joey tries to go on and defeat this puppet by any reasonable means, and feels that he finally can accomplish that. But then we end up going on into feeling like, okay, this movie obviously isn't done. We're almost halfway through, and and it feels like we've already ended this movie. So we continue on with Joey meeting with, of course, a doctor named Dr. Hayden. And Dr. Hayden is to take this whole entire house and turn it into one big massive lab. And we come to find out that that whole experimenting thing feels honestly like a waste of these people putting in this big huge lab experiment, because it just turns around and has Joey and Sally leave off to go on and find and save the one people that, of course, Billy has had differences with throughout this whole entire film, because they are, of course, consistently bullying Joey, and so now Joey is to be the only one that is to have the ability to save these kids, and they grow to appreciate that, like, this kid could have really gone on and, like, could have been one of them, and, like, they just didn't realize it. Like, they just didn't take the time. They just were to say that he was kind of different from all of them, and so, yeah. So, and that's what kind of made Joey kind of an outsider. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into that double 5-time territory. The grading of this film, I would have to state that this movie will fall onto either interesting or really just like a fun film that does have a tweed bit of horror side. But yeah, if you like E.T., if you like Poltergeist, if you like certain kind of movies where people are to move stuff with their mind, then this will be a fun movie for you. It'll, of course, feel like very much like a kid's movie, but still. So, with that said, I would definitely still give this a thumbs up. I for the life of me, can't go on and state that this is a bad film. And there are interesting things in it. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just double five this bad boy up. It's about that time again to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you spoil this movie. It's only an hour and change, so also like that's like the upside where it's like only like an hour and almost 20 minutes, and even that I was like, okay, like it feels like halfway through the movie, it feels like they ended the film, but they needed other things to do. So in the very beginning of this movie, getting into spoilers now, this movie is also available on Tubi, Tubi. Justifiably enough, I went on and couldn't find it anywhere else. So if you don't have Tubi, more than likely, I would probably recommend. There are a number of bootleg apps that I've gone on to use through the time of which that I've done this. You can probably find any kind of normal bootleg app, probably by searching the word movies app, and more than likely you'll go and find a plethora of different kind of options that maybe will hopefully be able to have you say you can see making contact. Maybe you'll go on to find Yes Movies or other kind of things that I've gone on and for a long time been using, and maybe you just might find a Google search that can find these apps and whatever. But anyways, with that said, let's go into spoilers. So we have Peter's funeral. They're going on, and the preacher is talking about evil and or avoiding evil and good and this and that. It's kind of like a very interesting speech, but heaven forbid like anything connected with me, because I'm like, okay, this is like any normal speech that I've probably would ever hear. And so we have a number of people that are just all kind of passing by after this funeral seems to be over, and it's kind of shake the hands of the closest family. We have one guy who's like, "Hey, keep your chin up, kid." It's like, "Hey, remember we're family," and this and that. And it's like, "Well, hey, like remember, hey, we're like, we're Aunt Margaret, and we're this and so on that." It's like, so, yeah, so everybody's just kind of passing by and having these kind of one-liners. So after the funeral, we have Joey in his bed just kind of looking at his father's picture. And we have Joey who is just talking about his dad. And so we all of a sudden have this closet that is to start to light up. And we start to have like Krispy Kreme being used way too often in this movie. I'm assuming Krispy Kreme is some kind of sponsor or something, because if it wasn't, then why wasn't it? Because they had like 3 different times where you had like a Krispy Kreme that like had a bunch of phones nearby it. It's like, you can't tell me that you just wanted to use this scene for the phones. Come on, movie. Plus also in 1985 there was a Krispy Kreme. Well, like that company went out of, like, is that company still alive somewhere? They still have Krispy Kremes? All I remember them for are them being in the Power Rangers movie, and the Zeo crystals were underneath the Krispy Kreme. So yeah, but let's go on. So we have the kid who opens up the closet to then realize that this phone is ringing off the hook, as well as these phones that are kind of ringing off the hook everywhere. So Joey picks up the phone to find out that it's his father. We also seem to have the Fletcher puppet that seems to be inside the Fletcher house, and it is to kind of open its eyes and kind of adjust things, getting ready to do whatever he's going to do. So we have the mom who brings up towels like any normal common task, and is to overhear her son talking to somebody. And at least like the mom isn't so nosy that she is kind of open up the door, but like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Because I know like a lot of parents would probably go on and do that. Like, "Hey, like, who are you talking to in this room where only you should be in here?" "Oh yeah, I'm just talking to my toys." "Oh, okay, all right." So we have Joey that goes on and is to go to school the next day. So we have these kids that really don't like Joey that much. And so what they do is they end up taking the kid's egg from this backpack. And I'm like, how and why does this kid just have an egg just in a backpack? I'm like, that doesn't seem like the most like protective way to keep this egg going. You would think it would immediately be crushed, and plus also like most of these eggs don't seem to be hard boiled anyways. So we have Martin. I couldn't get like there's a lot of cast members in this movie where clearly they don't have a name. But yeah, like we also in the early stages of this movie, when Joey was to see like the closet light up, we had a bunch of the toys all just kind of moving around. Charlie is actually the name of the robot that we see here, and like he was kind of moving around, and we had the gorilla that was kind of going and putting his hands over his eyes, and so we ended up kind of seeing a bunch of toys just kind of crazily just kind of moving around, and it was pretty cool. Reminding us of Poltergeist. I was getting Poltergeist flashbacks. But so Joey is in this classroom, and so Martin comes in, and Martin is to go on and explain to kids about these eggs. So we all of a sudden see one kid who is like downing his egg, and Martin's like, "Hey, like we just had lunch. Like, come on." So we all of a sudden have Martin turn to Joey, and for some reason now Joey has a black egg. Martin goes on to open the black egg and is to see that there's a skeleton inside. And I believe there was also like a note that came along with it. And so Martin is to ask, like, okay, like, who is the one who did this? So while Martin is distracted with these bully kids, we have Joey that is to use his ability to take this ruler and put this on Sally's desk and have this egg roll onto Joey's desk via this ruler and so on. So we have a moment where Martin is kind of getting like upset, and then he puts his hand on this desk and it crushes his egg. So it's like, whoops. So after class, we have Joey who's just kind of collecting his things. And so Sally kind of is looking at Joey like, like, there's something special about you, kid. It's like, I think I like you. Maybe we'll become good friends. And she doesn't say any of that, but you can just tell with her eyes that she says every bit of that and 12 other things. So we have Joey that goes on to use his ability to just kind of mess with the girl's pigtails. She's like, all right, and she leaves. So after school, because all the kids seem to go on and they are to stay after school. They're in kind of like a detention or just a discipline thing. So we have Martin that talks to Laura, who is Joey's mother, and it's a talk about like, well, hey, like, considering like your son just went through a great loss, it seems like he's going through some things. Like maybe your son should see like a doctor, like maybe a therapist of sorts, just to kind of work this through. And so we have, while Laura and Joey are just like driving home, Laura tells Joey, it's like, well, hey, like maybe you should go on and kind of keep some things to yourself, like keep them as a secret. Like I get that you want to go on and just kind of talk to people, but like there's some stuff that just like you probably shouldn't say to people. It's what she says. So we go on to have Joey that is to go on and follow both Charlie and Scooter, who is Joey's dog, and Charlie the robot is making his way to the Fletcher house, and Joey has to now go on and fetch Charlie and also Scooter. So Charlie goes into this house, and when Joey finds Charlie, he then also goes on to find Fletcher, the puppet. So Joey tries to kind of clean him up and dust him off. It's like, well, hey, I guess this is better than nothing. Like, maybe he was gonna go on and sell him on eBay in 1985, right? Because eBay existed in 1985. But so he's probably gonna hawk him or whatever to maybe to a pawn shop to see what were they gonna give him, so you can get a much better toy. So we go on to have Joey who goes into the kitchen, and we have Laura who's to turn the TV off and Joey is to turn the TV back on. We have Joey that is to take certain items like the salt and pepper shaker and be like, what? And he catches it. And Laura is like, what did you just do there? It's like, how did you do the trick? Like, what is it? Is it magnets? Like, how did you do this? Like, did you learn this in school? And Joey's like, no. Like, if anything, I ask it, and Dad helps me. And Laura's like, okay, do that again. And so, they do the thing with the milk. It's like, okay, put the milk on the other side of the table, and Joey just so we have the mom that's like, do it again. I want to know how do you do the trick? And there is no trick. It's just asking and you shall receive, because Joey has this special ability. So we have Joey that goes on to go into his room, and we now have a puppet that when he is to just be upset, feels like he's always kind of clearing his throat. Like, this guy desperately needs a throat lozenge or something. Because throughout this whole movie, he's just like, ah. I'm like, okay there, buddy. You really just need a lozenge. You really just need you need to, cure that hickle out of your chickle. Because, man, so we have the puppet that is to finally start speaking to Joey and tell him that if you think that's your father that you're speaking to on the phone, you're wrong, and I'm going to tell you who you're actually talking to. And so Fletcher is to go on and have the puppet or the gorilla with the TV kind of fly in. And so on this TV showcases Jonathan Fletcher's backstory, the puppeteer to this puppet. And so Fletcher, it seems, was to somehow study magic, even to the point of him getting into black magic. And so it seems that we end up having words being put out like black magic incarnation that is to possibly be this puppet. So we, of course, have the puppet that wants Joey to listen to him or else. And we have Joey find out what that or else means. Because all of a sudden, while Laura is just kind of going around the house, we all of a sudden start to see these kitchen knives start flying, and Joey, of course, is trying to help out his mother. But then the following day, we then have Lauren that starts to realize that it's like, oh my god, there's knives all over the kitchen. What happened? And she's immediately accusing Joey because she realizes he's the only one in the house. And Joey's like, well, hey, I did not do this. So we next up have Joey that is blaming the puppet for everything and wants to go on and just bury it in the dirt somewhere. And so all of a sudden Sally's like, well, hey, like, it seemed like you didn't come to school today. I was just kind of disappointed that you weren't there, because it would have been fun. Like, let's see what other abilities you have, Superboy, or whatever kind of goofy other hero counterpart we could call this guy. So we have Joey, who introduces Sally to Charlie, the robot. And so Charlie's doing all these things, and so Sally's asking Joey, it's like, how do you get that thing to do that? And Joey's like, well, it just does it. So we all of a sudden have the bullies that unbury this puppet, and we have them realize that, like, the Charlie robot is just kind of moving around. So these kids have these robotic tanks, and they start to attack this robot, and we have Charlie, who seems to have, like, nowhere to run, and so he's just kind of holding up his hands like, I surrender, and the tanks all of a sudden blow into them, and so Joey then turns into Carrie, and he's just like, ugh, with his mind, and he makes these tanks literally blow up. He's like Firestarter. So Joey blows up these tanks, and so the kids are like, oh crap. We have Martin that comes to Laura's place and is to grab this puppet, and so Martin comes in to talk to Laura. It's like, well, hey, like, did you wanna do what you were going to, like, have me suggest you do, by, like, having this kid, like, see somebody, like, see a doctor? And Laura, of course, is like, I don't think she wants to go on and have her son just being seen by a doctor, but her hand might be forced at some point. But anyways, we go on to have the kids that are all bickering about, like, well, hey, like, what am I going to tell, like, what am I going to tell people about these tanks? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, just come up with something. So all of a sudden these kids realize that there is this old abandoned Fletcher house. So they're like, well, hey, how about we make this kind of our, like, our hangout, like our hideout? Like, that'd be pretty cool, right? So we have Joey that goes to dinner and realizes that Martin is also going to be at dinner also. Joey and Lauren also notice that the dummy is now missing, and so, like, okay, where is he? Because Martin was to state to Lauren that it's like, well, hey, I brought this dummy back in, and it's like, what do you mean? And so by the time that by the time that Martin shows Laura the puppet's gone. Martin is coming to dinner. We have Joey that, like, I don't think he really just hates this guy, Martin, but, like, I think it's obviously too soon for Laura to be dating also. But Joey is to start to use his magic, like, just right in front of Martin, and Martin's like, hey, what's the trick? Where's, is there a magnet on this? This is like Jumanji all over again, where the pieces start to move, and they're like, it must be magnetized. So, Joey is to see that, like, Martin is, like, picking up this soup. And so Joey burns Martin's hand, and Laura ends up taking Martin and just dunking his hand into this fish tank and just puts ice in the fish tank. It's like, well, yeah, like, I don't know what's wrong with Joey. Like, he's never usually like this. And so Martin's like, oh, okay, all right, well. So after this whole dinner together, we have Joey who goes into his room, and we, of course, again have Joey who's talking to his dad via this red toy phone. Joey is going on and stating how like, Laura always goes on and talks to his teacher, and that also Joey doesn't want to go back to school anymore because he hates the kids that he's with, like, they're bullies and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, while Joey is kind of on a obviously, like, very important phone call, Fletcher goes on and grabs the Star Wars sheets from Joey and just rips them off. And all of a sudden it's to land where Fletcher the puppet was. So Joey grabs the sheet, is like, aha! But then we find out that it's just a stuffed panda. We also had a moment where there were certain times where Charlie was to kind of go on and try to help Joey, or try to do something, and he ends up getting, like, smothered with, like, stuffed animals. Or there's a lot of times where, like, Charlie just gets buried. So it's like, okay, that's kind of funny. So we have Joey that is to be like, okay, well, since now the sheet is to, and the puppet is not be here, well, there's only one possibility that this thing must be, and of course it must be the closet. So Joey opens up the closet, and so we all of a sudden have this completely darkened closet and whichever, and so Fletcher is there. So Fletcher, all of a sudden, this puppet is to have these electrical powers, as if, of course, he could go on and be either like any electrical kind of superhero or supervillain that we've ever seen, or Emperor Palpatine. The hate is coursing through you. I can't hold on any longer. So we have Emperor Puppet, that is going on and hurting Joey, having him, like, smacked against this wall. And so he's like, I hate you. And, like, Dad, help me, Dad. And so we have Joey that gets the strength to go on and just start choking this puppet out. It's really just, I hate you, yeah, I'm gonna frickin' kill you now. And so we have Laura and we have Martin that's like, what's going on? And they rush to the room. There seems to be a dresser in front of the door, and they're like, well, we can't get in this room. He won't let us in. The door is locked. What's going on? And so we also have the first time where Joey has these, like, crazy events. We have Laura that comes in the room, and, like, Joey jumps on her. It's like, whoa, okay. Like, I wasn't expecting that. Him come flying at his mom, and, like, we had Laura that was, like, comforting Joey. Is like, you're trembling. But so now that we had Joey who is choking on that puppet, This feels like some weird innuendo thing, but it's not. So next up, we have the doctor that comes in, Dr. Hayden, with all of this equipment that takes up this entire house. So much so that Laura is desperately like, man, I gotta save every piece of furniture that I can, because you guys are just taking over, and like I still have a house to live in. But okay, like Dr. E.T. girl that's gonna come in and just sabotage my whole house with your equipment. So we have Dr. Hayden that goes on to talk to Joey. It's like, well, yeah, like, it seems that there's to be some people from the phone company here that have quite some issues with that whole stunt that you had gone on to do with that whole phone thing. Like, man, like, people don't know what to charge anybody. So, for any of their calls. So Joey is to talk to this doctor, and the doctor is, as much as possible, trying to be very comforting. And so we have Dr. Hayden that sets Joey into this chair and is to tell him, it's like, well, like I've gone on and experienced many of people that are just like you, Joey, and what they go on and tell us that the dead aren't really truly dead. And so like that is to go on and really just open our eyes. And so we have Joey that just kind of sits in this chair, and they end up replaying the recording from the last event, thinking that this is going to like jar Joey's memory and him just do what he did the time before. But so we have the kid who is seemingly wielding a Darth Vader costume going on and stating to all the kids that there is a wimp within their midst, and they're, of course, needing to get rid of and capture this wimp, who, of course, is Joey. Basically just stating that he's an outsider. They got to figure out what to do with this outsider, and they figure capturing it but not holding it indefinitely is the cure for all of that. So we all of a sudden have Fletcher, who is to possibly somehow the puppet, listen on to this kid. He's like, well, I can't have that. And so when the kids start to hear this like rumbling, this almost earthquake-like thing, they then realize that this home is kind of caving in on them. And so Sally finds out what's going on, and so she rushes to find Joey, to need his help, to need his assistance, as if Sally's almost Princess Leia going on and telling Luke Skywalker or Obi-Wan, like, well, you're my only hope. Star Wars style. So Joey doesn't go on and just be like, well, yeah, like, aren't those the bully guys that hate and fear me? And should I not go on and give an F? No, Joey's just like, okay, let's go. Let's go because I know that they're in trouble. You've already stated that, so, like, let's just do this. So we rush to have Sally and Joey make it into this Fletcher's house, and we all of a sudden have all of these kids that are starting to go through here, and they are starting to see all kinds of things. We end up having one kid who ends up seeing this like massive snake head that kind of goes around this place and is kind of wreaking havoc. We also see that one kid is to open this door to see this massive cheeseburger monster. And the kid later on is like, well, yeah, I think I saw a hamburger. Might have even been a cheeseburger. I'm not quite sure. But it was a cheeseburger monster. going on and having these kids like explain all of their story to these people. It's like, dude, do you seriously believe this kid's story? What a tale he's turning out here. But so we have Joey that meets up with these kids, and we find out that this house almost becomes this like massive maze of sorts, that these kids are just kind of like, we're never gonna get out of here, we're gonna die in here. So we all of a sudden have one of the kids turn around, because we have one kid who's like, well, hey, like, who's that, like, and so we end up finding one person who was to seemingly look fairly similar to Darth Vader, and he turns on this lightsaber and like, we're getting out of here. So we all of a sudden have the sheriff who's getting a phone call, or like a radio. I'm not a phone call or radio. He's getting something. He's getting, I think he's getting a radio because he's out and about. So the sheriff is to go on and tell Laura and Martin that it seems not only Joey and Sally are missing, but also a number of other kids. Because I guess we just have the sheriff that had not gone on and checked his messages until now. So we have Joey that figures out where to go, as we also have like the massive puppet that is turning into this big kind of rock-like monster that just kind of peers in on these kids. And we have Joey who is stating it's like, well, he's just trying to feed off of our fear. And, like, we're not going to go on and we're not going to give in to that. So we have Joey that goes on to this room that has this chair with the puppet and what eventually will be seemingly Jonathan's spirit appear. So Joey ends up talking to the puppet and the puppeteer, and Joey's like, well, like, I don't know who to believe between either one of you. Like, we have the puppet that's stating like, hey, don't go on and do this, and you're telling me to kind of like face my fear, and or otherwise this puppet is gonna like forever torment me. Like, who should I believe? So we have Jonathan that is telling Joey that he needs to go on and he needs to face this. Like, he needs to go on and go through this door and him finally get the moment that he really needs the most, and that is to get comfort from his dad. So Joey opens this door, and the puppet's like, no, don't go in there. And it's like, well, shut up, you liar. So Joey goes into this door, and it's to seemingly somehow connect with possibly a white light of sorts. So maybe Joey, for a certain amount of moments, was to be in heaven talking to his dad. And so we come to find that all the kids had gotten out of this place, and Joey now is to be found by these people, and the doctors are trying to revive him, and Dr. Hayden makes the call to everybody, and she just kind of sticks her head out of like, hey, everybody, shut up. Joey, he's dead. Shouldn't Dr. Hayden gone on to pull, like, Martin and Laura aside and then broke it to them first, because it is their kid, and then gone on to tell everyone else? It feels that just Hayden was like, hey guys, kid's dead. Laura, don't give a single F about you. I'm just gonna walk off and just be like, meh. So we have Laura that is to be just in tears, just realizing she had lost her husband, and then she had lost her kid. Martin goes in to try to comfort Laura by stating it's like, well, like, maybe your son is with his dad, and like that's gonna be the one thing that you like need to take from this. And so Laura is to just need the comfort of Martin. But then all of a sudden, we start to see, as we have one guy kind of leave this hallway, that all of a sudden things are starting up again. We have Dr. Hayden grabbing a camera guy, like, hey, let's go upstairs, because Joey is in his room. And all of a sudden, all these things start coming out of this room. We have like the Millennium Falcon, and we have like X fighters that are kind of flying. We all of a sudden have like Star Wars toys that are just moving around. We start seeing all these toys and all these things just start to just come out of the room, and then we end up going on and getting to Joey inside this room, and Joey comes back to life, and that's how the movie just ends. With either Joey still has this ability, or maybe this was one last kind of like spiritual thing, and that's where it just kind of ends. So it was kind of interesting when certain people were to see, or let me backpedal. It's kind of interesting when like certain people were to have stated in this movie that like, well, like normally we wouldn't see these kinds of abilities with kids. Normally it would be something that would be when they hit like puberty, and like Laura's just like, well, he's 9. He's young. Like, no, like he's not hitting puberty anytime soon. So I don't know what you're talking about. But we also do had like Stir of Echoes, where the one kid just has this way about being able to talk to spirits, and is a lot better at it than his dad. It would have been interesting to ever have seen like a Stir of Echoes sequel, but I think like there was one, but it was like a Rob Lowe one, and it like probably wasn't as good. Um, but anyways, yeah, I'm just gonna go on and get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.